The reeking stench of overflowing dumpsters and stale beer slapped me in the face as I hurried down the deserted street. Neon signs, their colors dulled by grime, cast an uneven, flickering glow on the uneven cobblestones. My phone, held precariously between my ear and shoulder, displayed a measly 2% battery life. "I told you, Sarah. I'm almost there," I hissed, my voice barely audible over the rhythmic pounding of my heart. "Just a shortcut through this stupid alley, then I'm at your apartment." Silence crackled on the other end. Perfect. Just what I needed. A dropped call in the creepiest part of town. I quickened my pace, my tattered sneakers squelching against a puddle reeking of something unidentifiable. This alley wasn't on any map, a dark, festering scar that bisected the more affluent side of town from the underbelly I now found myself in. It was Sarah's fault, of course. My usually sensible roommate had a penchant for late-night adventures, especially on nights when I was working double shifts. Tonight's escapade involved a super-secret gig by some underground band in a dive bar with a reputation as shady as a $3 bill. The silence on the line was broken by a sudden, high-pitched screech that echoed eerily off the brick walls. I whipped around, my breath catching in my throat. My phone flickered and died, plunging me into an inky blackness that pressed down on me like a physical weight. Panic clawed at my throat. I fumbled in my purse, praying for a lighter, a single match, anything. My fingers brushed against a forgotten granola bar, then a crumpled tissue. Useless. "Sarah?" I called out, my voice trembling. Silence. Maybe the screech was just a rat, a common sight even in the nicer parts of town. Taking a deep breath, I decided to press on. The sooner I reached Sarah's bar, the sooner I could berate her for her irresponsible choices and get us both out of this nightmare alley. Each uneven step echoed like a gunshot in the stillness. Another sound pierced the oppressive silence, a low, rhythmic dripping that seemed to come from somewhere above. I strained my neck, squinting upwards. The darkness seemed to solidify, forming shapes that danced just at the edge of my vision. A cold tendril of fear snaked down my spine as I saw it. A single glowing red eye suspended high above. It blinked once, the darkness pulsing around it. My scream died in my throat, choking me with terror. The eye was followed by another, then another, until a dozen red orbs stared down at me from the unseen depths of the alley. They weren't eyes, not in the human sense. They were too large, too perfectly round, and the way they seemed to move independently, without a visible body, sent a fresh wave of terror crashing over me. A wet, leathery sound scraped against the brick wall behind me. I spun around, heart hammering against my ribs, but the darkness yielded nothing. The dripping sound grew louder, accompanied now by a low, guttural growl. My foot caught on something uneven. I stumbled, landing hard on the slick cobblestones. Scrambling to my feet, I tasted blood on my lip. Panic clouded my judgment. I lunged forward, my only goal to escape this festering pit of terror. As I ran, a chilling realization dawned. The alley wasn't getting any wider. The buildings seemed to be closing in, their walls pushing inwards. There was no escape. A cold breath washed over me, smelling of decay and damp earth. Something brushed my shoulder, sending a jolt of raw terror through my body. I shrieked again, this time a sound that tore from the primal core of my being. With a desperate lunge, I threw myself through a gap between two buildings. Bricks scraped against my skin as I squeezed through the narrow opening. I landed with a bone-jarring thud on the other side, rolling onto a bed of damp leaves and what felt suspiciously like bones. I lay there, gasping for breath, unable to tear my eyes away from the alley entrance. The low growls had been replaced by a cacophony of screeches and clicks. The red eyes flickered in and out of sight, hungry and predatory. Then, a long, sinuous tentacle slithered into view, the moonlight glinting off its slimy surface. It twitched like a snake's tongue, searching. My blood ran cold. These weren't rats, not even close. The tentacle, thick as my thigh, pulsed with an unnatural rhythm. It snaked back and forth, the tip brushing against the bricks at the alley entrance. With a sickening squelch, it withdrew, disappearing back into the darkness. Tears of terror welled up in my eyes, blurring my vision. I was trapped, a fly caught in a spider's web, but a web woven from something far worse than silk. A twig snapped behind me. I spun around, heart hammering against my ribs. A pale sliver of moonlight filtered through the dense canopy overhead, illuminating a figure crouched amongst the trees. Relief flooded me, momentarily eclipsing the terror. A person. Maybe they could help. "Hello?" I shouted, my voice hoarse. "Help me." The figure didn't move. It sat perfectly still, shrouded in the shadows. A low moan escaped its lay, a sound devoid of human emotion. My relief evaporated, replaced by a chilling dread. The figure slowly rose, its form emerging from the darkness. It was tall and gaunt, its skin an unhealthy shade of gray, stretched taut over protruding bones. Its eyes, sunken deep within their sockets, shone with an unnatural green luminescence. It wasn't human. It was something else entirely. A monstrous parody of a person twisted by some unseen force. The creature lurched towards me, its movements jerky and unsettling. A low growl rumbled from its throat, the sound sending shivers down my spine. Panic seized me again. I scrambled to my feet, ignoring the throbbing pain in my ankle. There had to be a way out, a way back to the alley. Anything was better than facing this grotesque being. I pushed through the undergrowth, branches whipping at my face, tearing at my clothes. The creature lumbered after me, its moans echoing in the stillness of the night. I burst into a clearing, collapsing onto my hands and knees. My breath hitched in my throat as I looked up. The buildings that had lined the alley were gone. In their place stood a vast, circular structure of black, polished stone. It pulsed with a faint, eerie luminescence, casting an unnatural glow on the surrounding forest. The screams began then, a horrifying symphony of human terror. They seemed to emanate from the very stones of the structure itself, a chorus of the damned. I scrambled to my feet again, a renewed wave of desperation propelling me forward. I had to get away. This place, whatever it was, felt ancient and evil. It reeked of death and despair. As I ran, I saw them. Hundreds of figures, just like the creature that had pursued me, shuffled around the bays of the structure. They were drawn to it like moths to a flame. I stumbled on, my lungs burning, tears streaming down my face. Just when I thought I couldn't run another step, I saw it. A glimmer of light in the distance. Hope surged through me. Maybe it was a road, a town, anything but this nightmare forest. I pushed myself onwards, ignoring the exhaustion, the fear, everything except the promise of escape. As I reached the light source, I tripped, sprawling onto the ground. Pain flared in my ankle, a searing agony that threatened to consume me. I looked up, my vision blurring. The light wasn't an escape. It was another one of those horrible buildings, this one smaller but radiating the same malevolent energy. A figure detached itself from the shadows and moved towards me. It was the creature again, its green eyes fixed on me with predatory hunger. My scream died in my throat as the creature reached out, its long, skeletal fingers brushing against my face. The touch sent a wave of icy dread through me, a sense of utter hopelessness. Then, something unexpected happened. The creature froze, its head jerking upwards. It let out a shrill shriek, its gaze locked on something above. I followed its line of sight. There, hovering high above the clearing, was a single giant eye. It was the same red eye from the alley, only 1,000 times larger, pulsing with an infernal light. The creatures, including the one looming over me, all turned their faces upward, their grotesque moans morphing into a chorus of terrified whines. The giant red eye blinked once, and a beam of pure white light erupted from its center, engulfing the clearing in an otherworldly glow. The creatures, myself included, were bathed in the light. Everything after that is a blur. When I came to, I was lying on hard, cold stone. Disoriented and throbbing from head to toe, I sat up, taking in my surroundings. I was inside the building, the one illuminated by the red eye. The air was thick with the smell of ozone and a metallic tang that caused my stomach to churn. The red eye was gone, replaced by a smooth black ceiling that seemed to stretch into infinity. Around me, countless figures, the monstrous creatures from the forest, lay motionless. Their skin, once a sickly gray, was now a glistening black, their bodies seemingly petrified. Terror threatened to consume me again, but a flicker of movement in the distance caught my eye. A lone figure, shrouded in shadow, stood at the far end of the vast chamber. As it stepped into the light, I recognized the same gaunt figure from the forest, but something was different. Its eyes, now a clear blue, held a look of profound sadness and fear. It opened its mouth, and a voice, raspy but familiar, filled the cavernous chamber. "Sarah?" It was my voice coming from the creature's mouth. My mind reeled. Was this some kind of twisted joke? Had the creatures somehow inhabited my body? The figure took a hesitant step towards me, its voice cracking with emotion. "It's me, Emily. This isn't me." My breath caught in my throat. Emily was my best friend from childhood. We'd been inseparable until she moved away years ago. What was she doing here? What was happening? As if sensing my confusion, Emily continued, her voice trembling. "These things, they took us. One by one. They trapped us in their city, their prison. They feed on our fear." She gestured at the petrified figures around us. "Those are the others. Lost to terror, the red eye. It chooses. It judges us, feeds off our deepest fears." A horrifying realization dawned on me. The creatures, the screams, the red eye. It was all a test, a cruel game designed to break us. "And now?" I rasped, my voice barely audible. Emily winced. "I don't know. You resisted somehow. Maybe because you were expecting something bad?" Her voice held a flicker of hope. Looking down at my trembling hands, a strange sense of calm washed over me. Had I truly faced my fears? Had I in some way defied the monstrous entities that held us captive? "We have to get out of here," I said, my voice gaining strength. "There must be a way." We didn't know what awaited us beyond the black walls of this prison, but the alternative was unthinkable. Together, Sarah, trapped in my body, and I, sharing her fear and newfound hope, made our way towards the unknown, a single sliver of moonlight leading the way.